Alright everybody, welcome back to another episode of Colton Posey Fishing. So today we're going to be doing a complete lake breakdown. This is a lake that I've never been to or anything and never even heard of it. I put my cursor on it and I zoomed in. That's the one that I chose. So I'm going to break down exactly what I do throughout seasons. Okay, so we're going to be talking about winter, we're going to be talking about spring, we're going to be talking about summer, we're going to be talking about fall, the whole 9 yards, baits, everything. I'm going to tell you exactly how I break down a new lake. So stay tuned. This is definitely something you don't want to miss. All right, guys, we are live. And so as I explained, we're going to be talking about lakes or a lake that I've never fished before. I know absolutely zero about it. I know nothing about it. So the lake that we're going to be breaking down today, it is called Pomedi Tree Lake. It's kind of French name, I'm guessing. Either way, it's in Missouri. Um, Now, with all this being said, there's a few things that I want to talk about before I go to breaking down a lake. Okay, the number one thing is before I go to this fishery, I'm going to get on Google or whatever type of internet that you use, DuckDuckGo, whatever, Bing, Firefox, whatever. Type in and figure out exactly what is most predominant in this fishery. So, is it largemouth bass? Is it smallmouth bass? Is it a spotted bass fishery? Because that can change not exactly the entirety of the fishery, but it can help you predict on where these fish are going to move. So spotted bass typically like to hang in, kind of the deeper, they're more of a suspending fish than anything, or they are in my home lakes. So, and everywhere that I fish that have spotted bass in it, they tend to suspend further out and off of deep points and stuff like that, and they don't stay shallow very long most of the time. They're typically off away from the shallow banks. So largemouth, they move up shallow, they'll move out deep, they're kind of here, there, and in between. And then you've got smallmouth who I've called them shallow, I've called them deep. It just depends on the season. So either way, what we're going to do is I haven't looked up anything on this lake and I'm not going to, but I'm just going to guess that this lake has largemouth in it. So let's just say that I've did the research and it's got largemouth in it. Now, once I understand that it's a predominantly largemouth bass fishery, then I'm going to say what type of bait is in it. What is these fish eating? Number one, we know if there's water, there's crawfish. So if we know there's crawfish in there, then we're going to focus on a crawfish pattern, and we're going to figure out if, or not if, but what kind of shad is in this lake. So is it threadfin shad, is it gizzard shad, is it blueback herring, or whatever. So looking at this lake right off, I do not think by any means that this is a blueback herring lake, but more than likely it's got threadfin shad in it. So specifically, we're going to focus on threadfin shad colored baits, and we're going to focus on largemouth prone areas, the typical areas that largemouth typically go throughout these seasons. Okay, and we know there's going to be crawfish in there, so we can always fall on a crawfish pattern if we need to. So with that being said, we figured out, hey, this is a largemouth lake. There's threadfin shad, there's crawfish. So the baits that I'm going to tie on is going to mimic crawfish and it's going to mimic threadfin shad. Okay, so we got that down. Now, let's say we're going to this lake during winter. So we're going to break down each season, but for right now, we're going to say it's dead of winter. Okay, the water temperature we're just going to say is 50 or 45 to 50 degrees in this lake. Just throwing out a random number, 45, 50 degrees. So we got this entire lake here, and we see this looks like the very shallow end of the lake. South end of the lake looks very shallow. This end of the lake, the northern end, looks a lot deeper, and we've got a dam on the northern end. So, me personally, during the winter, especially with the water being low, or the water's probably low and the water's cold. So we understand these fish's metabolisms slow down during the winter. Therefore, we're going to have to fish our baits a little bit slower, okay? And a lot of times these fish are lethargic for several hours throughout the day. So we're going to have to, basically entice these fish to bite. But me personally, if it's winter, I'm going to focus most of my time here on the north end of this lake, simply because it's deeper and the fish should be more predictable. All right, so first thing we want to look at is the creek channel. So this is the creek channel. Follow my mouse right here. This is the creek channel. Sorry, y'all may hear a little buzzing from my computer. But this is the creek channel. This is a creek channel. Winds around. It gets real wide right here. We got a creek channel right here. So the areas that I would start, let's just say, well, right here's a boat ramp, I'm guessing, because we've got the buoys and all that stuff. So let's just say we launch right here. One of the first areas that I would check out, something very simple. I'm going to guess there's tournaments that launch out of here all the time. Okay, when fish are released from tournaments, they don't just go swimming all the way back wherever you caught them. Okay, so they're gonna pull up somewhere. They're gonna have to rest. They're gonna have to eat. They're gonna have to do their normal things while they're on their way to wherever they are wanting to go. So with that being said, the first place that I'm gonna focus is right here on this dam. Okay, so we've got this dam right here. We've got, let's see here, we've got from 3 foot all the way down to 53 foot. So, and if we scroll out, we see the sharp contours, what we call the highways. This is typically where the fish are going to travel, is right in these areas. Okay, this is where they're going to move out and suspend. They're going to do a lot of stuff out here. This area right here on these sharp contours during the winter specifically is where I'm going to be looking. Now, we've also got a creek channel that runs right here and a creek channel that runs right here all the way back into this little cove. So with that being said, I would, at least drive down this with my units and I would look and see if I see any fish. Now, just to save time, let's say you drive down it and you see a few, but you don't see anything worth stopping. Most people are gonna stop about right here. But if you notice something, we've got this channel that goes up in here. Ditches are very, very productive during the winter. So a lot of times these fish will move up into areas like this because they're protected from weather conditions, and they will suspend in this ditch. Also, shad and stuff will too. So with that being said, they've got food, they're protected, they can do whatever they need to survive, and they're going to do whatever they have to do to survive, basically. So they're going to get in this ditch and suspend. Now, the fish that are suspended, I want to use things like jerk baits, whether it's deep diving jerk baits. And when I say deep diving, it just kind of depends on where the shad's at. So if the shad's 10 foot deep, I want to use a jerk bait that's about 10 foot deep. I want to try to get not only the bass active to my jerk bait, but I kind of want the bait fish following my bait. Okay. Now, with that being said, swim baits work very well. So I know y'all heard me talk about the 1/4 ounce Strike King swim baits. Yeah, the 1/4 ounce Strike King swim baits work very, very well during this time, but understand with you using a 1/4 ounce, it does take a little bit longer to get deep. So if these fish are sitting 20 feet, you're going to have to count that down. But here's the thing, with the 1/4 ounce, once you get down there, you can slow that bait down big time. So that's one of the reasons I don't throw a 3/8 ounce this time of year, because I'm not moving the bait very quickly. Okay, so it does take a little bit of time. It is kind of consuming, but at the same time, the payoff is a lot better. So what I would be looking for is I would check this ditch, and more than likely during the wintertime, when you check this ditch, you're going to see fish on it. Now, I would move into this cove, especially if I saw fish in this ditch right here. I would hit these other areas that has ditches in them, like this one. This one's awesome. Look at this. It's got docks. You got a little place for them to spawn during the spring. They've got docks. They've got a ditch. There's probably grass and all kinds of stuff up here. Maybe, I would guess, something. But this would be a great area to check out. Same with this one. It's a long, long ditch. And it's not but 40 something foot deep, so it's not that deep. Now, this is coming from a guy that fishes, Highland reservoirs a lot, so 40 foot's nothing. So, But I mean, you've got plenty of choices. Now, another area, we know the creek channel runs right here, and they're going to follow creek channels to basically migrate wherever they're going to migrate. So you could have fish that live here this time of year, which I would guarantee there's fish here somewhere. But during the winter, I would focus mainly on like this sharp contour right here, this really really sharp area. I would check this entire place right here on a graph. If they're moved up here in this area, like this hump, like here's a little hump that's just kind of sneaky. It goes from 40 foot, 19 foot, all the way up to 16 foot. That's a perfect place for bass to live during the winter. Same right here. Here's a little offset hump that, a lot of fishermen are probably pressuring this area right here, but they're not really looking at this. They're not really looking at this little hump out here. So you could have just a buku bundle of bass living right here that you can target with jerk baits and swim baits and all that good stuff, deep diving crankbaits, whatever. But um, there's a lot of potential in that area. Now let's follow the creek channel down. So we've got a split right here. It goes down south, and this one comes around to the west and goes south. So right here is a good little point. So we've got a sharp point right here where the lake splits off. This would be a migratory point. So during the spring, I mean, you could catch a bunch of bass off a little area like this just because fish are traveling out of this cove and stuff like, are traveling out of this arm right here and traveling from this arm right here up to here. So, and they kind of meet and then they'll push up to wherever they're going to go to their spawning coves, wherever they're going to live. Okay. Or even bass that's being released here. They could be coming around through here, make their way through here, swim out, come around over here. I mean, the choices are endless, but either way, this would be a great area also to check out. Now, one thing that there's two areas right here specifically. Honestly, I would probably spend all day in this area during the winter. To be honest with you, I probably would never leave. Where my cursor's going around right here, I would probably never leave this area. um, Simply because we've got a creek channel also that swings right here. And now see where this creek channel meets? Right here in this, or on this channel swing bank. This is a perfect spot during the winter for fish to just hang out. They're just going to hang out and eat. I mean, that's all they're going to do. They got deep water. I mean, 70 foot of water to suspend in and do whatever. And then they can move up anytime they get ready to target whatever they're eating. Now, right over here, we've got the same thing. We've got where the channel swings right here, this long, tight contour where the channel swings up against it. I mean, and then you've got another um, creek channel that runs up into this flat area. I mean, this right here would be a perfect wintertime area. You've got other little points that come out and stuff like that. Humps. You got a hump right here. You got a flat right here. I mean, a big flat right here. I mean, this would be an incredible place to focus on during the winter. Now, let's talk about spring. So first we're going to be, well, actually what we're going to do, we're going to anticipate that it's middle of spring. So while we're anticipating it's middle of spring, we're going to say there is fish that are in the pre-spawn, spawn, and post-spawn stage. So we're going to focus on all three because they all kind of tie together and they can be tied together. It's pretty simple. So with that being said, we're going to back out. And what I typically like to do during the spring is I like to focus on the most narrow part. So me personally, I would focus on this area right here. Okay, so we're going to say that we're launching right here. I'm going to focus on this area right here. We should know by our wintertime catches that these fish, there's a big population of fish here, and they're going to move into these arms. So we already know that. So we want to eliminate that area and break down the entire lake. So me personally, I'm going to go into this area right here. Okay, so moving down, we see where the creek channel swings right here. This area right here, I wouldn't necessarily say this pocket, but this pocket right here would be a perfect one to check out. Um, Simply because if we do have winds from the east, it's going to be blocked, and if we have winds from the north, it's going to be blocked. And depending on what's on this side, northeast winds, it should pretty well be protected. This looks like a sort of kind of protected cove. We're not sure because we haven't fished the lake. So right in this area right here, we should have pre-spawners. Okay. This area right here, we should have pre-spawners. This area right here, we should have pre-spawners. Same right here. I mean, you're still going to have those bass that, are migrating from their wintertime haunts. So, and then the post-spawners that are moving out, that's moving back to the same area they come from. So this area right here would be great for checking for um, uh, pre-spawn, spawn, and post-spawn fish. All right, so with that being said, we're gonna move a little bit further down. All right, so all these coves over here and stuff, we're gonna check all these areas, um, simply because these are protected areas. These should be very well protected areas for fish that are in the pre-spawn, spawn, and post-spawn, um, you know, springtime deal. Now, as you see here, we've got a big channel swing here. Okay, and then it looks like it comes around and boom, comes back around on this side, back around on this side. So like an area like this too, this would be a good pre-spawn and spawn, post-spawn area to check out. Right here also, where these little pockets tuck in and stuff. Right here, I mean, the possibilities in spring are endless. That's the amazing thing about fishing during the spring. So you it's just kind of endless. But the baits that I would typically be using, like when I'm focusing on like the pre-spawners, I'm going to be using square bill crankbaits going down these banks right here, rock crawlers, spinner baits, Texas rig worms. Um, I mean, a bunch of y'all know the baits that I use. I'm a power fisherman, so I'm typically going to be using some type of moving bait, swim baits, uh, anything like that to cover a lot of water really fast to see if I can find very active fish. Now, with the spawners, I'm typically going to be using creature baits, trick worms, things like that. But me personally, I don't fish for spawners a whole lot just because of my eyesight. I don't have good eyesight. Um, but those are baits that you can use to help entice those spawning fish to bite. So, with that being said, let's talk about the post spawners. Me personally, I don't really focus on the post spawners until there's really no fish spawning. Um, Simply because there's this saying that goes around about post spawners, the post spawn funk, right? So we know that those fish that are in the post spawn, they're typically wore out, they're beat up from spawning, and it's pretty hard to get them to bite. So, once we get to that stage, I typically move to finesse bait. So I'm throwing shaky heads and drop shots and things like that to try and entice these fish to bite. I still go back to the Strike King Rage Swimmer during the post spawn simply because I can move it slower, and a lot of times those fish are not going to chase something that's really fast or just wide open. So now, with that being said, let's talk about summer. My favorite time of year to fish. People who know me know that I love to fish during the summer. The hottest time of the year is my favorite time of the year. So let's talk about what the bass do during summer. The biggest misconception that I see people have during summer, they say, "Oh, it's so hot. Well, you got to fish at night to catch fish." No, no, you don't. I catch 90% of my fish during the summer, and I catch boatloads of them. I absolutely love fishing in the hottest time of year, simply because crawfish, shad, it doesn't matter, whatever type of forage is in the lake is wide open. Everybody's metabolisms are high. They've got to constantly eat to stay healthy. So, what changes is around the July, August time when these fish they get beat up really bad. It's what we call pressured. They get pressured horribly, and they have, they're they're harder to entice to bite, if that makes sense. So once that gets there, that's when your shaky heads and your drop shots, your Nico rigs and things like that are typically going to play a big part, where you have to swap your swim baits down to where you're running, like a 3.75 or a 2.75 inch instead of a 3.75 inch and things like that. So just be aware of that. The later part of summer, it does get tougher, but if you know what you're doing, you can still catch those fish, and you got to use your electronics wisely, because if you get bit and you miss a couple of fish, you're going to have to wait a little while. So during the summer, you want to move fast. So if I get bit twice and I miss two fish, and then I throw the third time and I don't get bit, I'm automatically gone. I'm going to another area. Okay. And then I'm going to remember that place. And then I may say an hour later, I'm going to cruise back down to that area where I was catching that school of fish, or where I attempted to catch that school of fish. And then I'm just going to try to target again. Now, what I would do during the summer is I would fish the exact same areas as I would during the winter. I would be staying in the north end of the lake where the dam is. Now, it's going to be a little bit different. I'm not going to focus on these ditches. I'm mainly going to be on the main lake. So right here at the dam is a good area to catch suspended fish. Or jerk baits are still really good this time of year, during the summer, to catch um, suspended bass. Number one, because they're willing to chase. So you can run a jerk bait that's only 4 or 5 foot deep, that just goes 4 or 5 foot deep on a fish that's suspended at 15 to 20 foot, and they will come up and hit it. They do it all the time. And this is one of the biggest misconceptions. Your walking baits and stuff like that, using it in open water, you'll catch a lot more fish that are suspended during the summer, on your top water baits, because they're more willing to chase it down. They're hungry. They got to eat. Their metabolisms are high. They all got to eat. So, with that being said, I would focus on like the dam area. Okay, I would focus back on this island. I would focus back on this point. I would hit this channel swing right here where the sharp contours are. I would check this ledge right here. We've got a good shallow flat right here that these fish can pull up on early in the morning and feed. I mean, if you don't wear this out with the top water bait that morning, you're insane. Same right here. We've got this little point that comes out. We got this little point that comes out. I mean, the possibilities are endless. And I see a lot of people, we tend to overcomplicate things. And one thing that I can't break down to you, I can't express more than anything, try to keep stuff simple, slow down, take your time, pay attention to what's going on, and try to enjoy yourself. Because if you enjoy yourself and you have a good attitude about the day, you're going to catch more fish, because 90% of bass fishing is mental. Okay, I don't care what anybody says, 90% of bass fishing is mental. If you have a bad attitude, you're not going to catch fish, okay? I mean, I've had bad days too. Everybody has them, but try to stay positive, and you will definitely catch more fish. So like this area right here is a perfect example. This area right here, see where it says shoal? That's a perfect area to try during the summer. Same right here. This right here, this ditch would be perfect for winter. Now we got the channel swing that comes right here. So we could fish this point right here and then back up. I mean, I would fish this entire thing, or at least scan it and see if anything's on it. Um, let's move over here to this other side. So let's say we go this way. I'm going to fish this area right here. Okay. We see the channel swings back over here. I'm going to check this ledge. I'm going to check all the way down this area right here. Then I'll shoot over here. Check this area all the way around this swing right here. And then where the channel swing meets right here, this is a perfect little spot to check during the summer. Anywhere that they can school up on. This island ought to be insane during the summer. I mean, it should be. They've got flats to feed. They've got points. They got deep water close by. I mean, this should be insane. Keeping up with them is a different story, but with live sonar now, shouldn't be that much of a problem. Nearly everybody's got it on their boat. I still run them down with 2D sonar. So, I mean, if you got live scope, and you know how to use it, that's another big thing. If you know how to use it, you should be able to catch fish right here. Now, let's talk about fall. One of my favorite times also. So I love the summer to fall transition because the fish start really, really schooling, like hard. And what they're doing is they're feeding up for winter. They know winter's right around the corner, and sometimes winters are harsh on fish. So they're going to eat as much as they can, and typically they're on shad. Now, one thing I do want you to understand, like I've always said, there's fish that live in the creek, they die in the creek, and they spawn in the creek. There's fish that live on the main lake, they die on the main lake, they spawn on the main lake. Everywhere. I don't care where you go. But understand that the fish that are in the creeks typically are going to feed on crawfish 90% of the time. Now, during the fall, a lot of times the shads start pushing into the creeks a lot more. That doesn't mean that the bass are only eating shad. They are going to focus on shad, but they're still going to eat on crawfish. So once these fish are getting hammered by crankbaits and stuff all summer long, when you go into the creeks and stuff, check with crawfish. When you're on the main lake during the fall, check with crawfish patterns. So when I say check with crawfish patterns, I mean simply you can use the same bait you've been using all year long. Change the color on it. So if I'm using a lavender shad uh, type crankbait where it's white and got some purple in it that I'm trying to mimic threadfin shad, then I'm gonna swap to like a red and black or something like that, or something similar that mimics crawfish, or green pumpkin. Um, just to try and mimic the crawfish and see if that entices the fish, because sometimes it will. They get used to seeing shad type baits over summer, and then hey, you know. So throughout summer and throughout fall, I'm typically throwing I say two. I'm throwing three top water baits. I'm throwing a walking bait. I'm throwing the old school head and torpedo. I typically swap to the head and torpedo once the fish get pressured on the walking baits. So once the fish get to seeing the walking bait so much, they get to where they quit hitting that bait. Once they quit hitting that bait, I swap to the head and torpedo, and a lot of times it's a different action, but it still mimics the shad that they don't see a whole lot. The third one is a buzz bait. So if I, for some reason, move up into the creeks or something, I'm on a really, really good largemouth bite in a creek where fish hadn't been fished for in a while, then I'll typically swap to the buzz bait, your white and your black buzz bait. I just keep it super simple. White or black buzz bait is typically what I use when it comes to buzz baits. Now, with that being said, on top of that, there's two spinner baits that I typically throw throughout summer and fall. And summer and fall kind of tie in together because the fish are still really aggressive. The first spinner bait is the spot sticker. I rotate between the lavender shad and then I think it's called green shad. It's green and white. It kind of mimics a gizzard shad, blueback herring, things like that. But the lavender shad kind of mimics the threadfin, okay? Now, the other spinnerbait that I throw is the Booyah Quad Blade spinnerbait, okay? So it's got four blades, four little willow blades on it, and you can move it pretty fast, but it mimics a good school of fish, or a good school of shad, and it's really really useful during the fall when these bass are schooling up on multiple big balls of shad. Okay, so that the quad blade booyah spinnerbait, golden black works good. Just the white and chartreuse works good, but either way, your quad blade spinnerbaits are going to work really well. Now, on top of that, the crankbaits that I typically run during the spring or during the summer and fall, I'm sorry. Square bill crankbaits. Typically I run the Strike King square bill crankbaits. There's a reason KVD made so much money off of them for years. Also the Lucky Craft work really well. Just about any kind of square bill works as long as it's got a good action. All of them's different. It's kind of like a prop you get for your boat. You know, you're gonna have one that's better than the other. Even if it's the same brand, they're all kind of built different. They're built the same, but I think machines are doing it. So you know they all got a little bit of different action. That's the reason sometimes you'll catch more fish off of the same bait than you would the other, a duplicate. But with that being said, square bills typically stick into shad patterns. I'll check with crawfish patterns if I'm not getting bit on the shad patterns. Secondly is the Strike King Series 3 crankbaits. Okay, so that's a big one, Series 3. Okay, these are really good about going through cover and stuff. They have a little bit different action. Now, when I'm going on the deep diving side, I'm running like a 5XD, 6XD, or Rapala DT series crankbaits. These are simply, they have different actions, they have different sounds, and obviously, if I'm running a 6, 5, 4, 3XD, I'm throwing that for a specific depth range. Okay, so understand that. I'm still using my swim baits, but typically I swap to a high tech. I still use the Squadron swim bait head 90% of the time when I'm throwing the 3.75 inch or bigger. But I'm typically throwing a 3/8 ounce swim bait head simply because I can move that bait faster, higher in the water column. So I'm keeping my rod at around 2 o'clock and I'm reeling very fast. Now, that's one thing that I can't express to people enough, and I've had people get in my boat and be like, "Man, why are you moving so fast?" And it's simply because everything is moving fast, and I want these fish to react. I don't want them to get a good look at it. And once I start catching fish, they start trying it, and they start catching fish. I had a guy call me the other day and say, "Man, I never knew I could fish a fluke like this because I always thought you had to fish slow." No, no. During the summer, during the fall, and late spring is perfect times to be fishing these baits super fast. As I tell people all the time, if you make 10 casts and your forearms do not feel like they're about to fall off, you're not moving it fast enough. So just give it a try. Let me know what you think. But either way, guys, that's what I would do breaking down a new lake. And obviously, colors and stuff like that, it's going to depend on, water clarity and light conditions and stuff like that. That would be a whole separate video, but that's what I do to break down a new lake. I hope this helps. If it does, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. It helps me out a whole lot. Also, we've launched our members only section, and what happens is once you sign up, you get exclusive perks. So you will get my videos early. So like this video that you're watching right now, you could have watched this video a week and a half ago. Okay. Secondly, you can contact me directly. So you're not going to get my automated message system. You're going to get me directly. Your comments will be highlighted here on YouTube also, so you'll also be the first one to respond, or I'll respond to. $2.99 a month. It just helps me out a whole lot, guys, with gas, with equipment, with cameras, and all this stuff. I put in tons of hours, like this video right now. I did one earlier today. I'm doing this one right now. I've got about 14 hours wrapped up in today, recording, trying to get content and stuff out to y'all. So I would really appreciate it. Either way, guys, I'll see you next time.